reassembly time. So we've got our valve assembly here. Our felt is already in there. Take the screen, push it down in there, make sure that it's seated nicely and flush against that felt. Washer goes in next. Okay, everything lays flat. Put your spring and your plunger down in there. Now you can play the game of maybe try to get it, or you can just flip it over. Once it's seated in there, it'll kind of stand on its own. Take your washer, put that in there. Screw it all together. Now, don't tighten it at this point. And the reason why is, if you tighten this together, this O-ring is going to expand. And then when you go to put this back in, it's going to be really, really hard because that O-ring is putting pressure against this tube. So leave this loose right now. You can get it later with this, that flathead portion. That's going to go there, and now we're going to insert everything back in the tube. Okay guys, so I put that spacer piece in. This screwdriver has a magnetic tip on it, and it slid in there, and I was just kind of twisting the screwdriver and moving it back and forth, and ended up getting the holes lined up. As soon as those holes lined up, I stuck whatever's handy. Just get something in there to hold it so you can start threading. Now your valve assembly can go in. You want the threaded portion on the bottom. Okay, now I'm using an Allen key against threads and the brass. So I'm being very gentle and trying very hard not to push against the threads themselves so I don't bugger it up. We'll get that guy centered, and we'll put this little anchoring screw back in. Now this screw does not grab the edge of this pipe. Basically the way it works is it's a small screw that fits inside a larger hole. So that's how it anchors. It doesn't actually pull things together. Tighten that down. And now I'm going to go in with my tool or my screwdriver, and I'm going to snug up my valve good and tight. Once that's done, I'm going to go back down to the vise and get this, this stud good and tight. Alright, now that I've got this stud tightened down, I can put my barrel band back on. Now if you're unsure of where your barrel band goes and you don't have any old marks on your tube here, you can use this plastic piece as a guide. You want to be careful with this plastic piece. It's got a very shallow angle and then a much tighter angle cut into it. The shallow angle goes down on the pressure tube, on the air tube. And then I'll just kind of locate my barrel band somewhat centered. Everything is lined up. Your transfer port O-ring right here, this may be a good time to replace that if it's buggered up like this one is, or whatever. I don't have any replacement, so this one's going to go right back on. Normally I would pull that and replace it. Alright, now instead of trying to hold all this stuff together and put the barrel in, I'm just going to go ahead and slide the barrel in. The back end here should line up, and then you should be able to look through your breech and see a screw hole. And get some light on it. So I can see the screw hole. My tail end is lined up flush. Now I can just flex a little bit, slide this piece with the transfer port O-ring right into place. And you'll know you're in place because there's a hole here, and transfer port hole is there, and there's also a hole in the back. And if you don't see all the way through to your screw holes, you know that you're in a bad position. Your transfer port O-ring will be crushed when you tighten everything down. It's supposed to be. Okay, now that you've got this screw in, you want to kind of make sure that these two are lined up. While you still have a chance, while things, maybe don't tighten this down all the way, and just kind of eyeball it from the top, and look down the sides and make sure that these aren't all going crazy on you, because your barrel band isn't locked down right now. Alright, now let's put the bolt back in, and I'm just going backwards through everything. The screw in the back here, all it does is hold the bolt in place, and there's a little divot in the bolt. Okay, so you want to make sure that divot is towards the back once you put all this in, and then that should line everything up just how you want it. It's another good O-ring to replace right here. Okay, put that down. Oh, make sure that this hole right here, this is your transfer port hole, make sure that's pointed down. With the little divot on your bolt handle, you might see your bolt handle move a little bit right when you tighten up on that screw. All right, looks like this guy's next. Now I forget which way this goes in, but there's two ways I can tell. One, this is all silver and kind of oily, and this I remember being on the outside of the gun, so that tells me it's just going to go in just like that. Another way to tell is to reference the exploded view. Does that even have that one on there? Yeah, here it is. Now remember guys, this had that little bit of spring pressure to it. So I'll find my hole here. I start this thread off camera because otherwise it's very difficult. Okay, this was the small screw, goes on the bottom. The long screw, this guy here, is going to go all the way through and thread into the same piece. Before we do that, we put our end cap back on. You'll notice this screw is recessed, so it looks nice and it anchors everything from moving, whereas this one, it protrudes. Alright, now I put my sights back on. Alright, sights are back on. Now it's time for the stock. You take one final look. Everything looks good now. Alright. That's back in place. Trigger guard. The wood screw goes towards the back. You can also look down in the holes and see wood back here and a machine screw slot up front. One more thing I forgot, guys. The barrel band. I never tightened up this screw. Well guys, a couple things. Now that the gun is all ready, I can go ahead and perform a pressure test by inserting a CO2 and tightening it down and get out there and get shooting. Another thing is, I didn't go over where to grease, what to grease or what to oil. Like I said, go online, pull up an instruction manual. It'll tell you places to put a little Pel gun oil or grease, or, you know, worst case scenario, go in there and say, I know this is a piece that moves, so I'm going to put a little dab of grease, just a little film on it. Don't overdo it. Another thing is, if you're going to use grease, use silicone diver's grease inside these. It's a lot healthier for them. Hope some of you found this video helpful. I wish you good luck with your rebuild, and get out there and get shooting.